Introducing the African Diaspora News Channel app, your gateway to stories that's overlooked by the corporate mainstream media.
And we serve as the voice to the Truthful Black community.
Again, we got Dr. Candace Matthews.
A lot of these documents, looking at.
We are committed to informing and educating through the power of media.
This country is supposed to be about the land of the free for all. It has not been free for Black people, and we are tired.
With our platform, we're helping to end injustice by exposing it.
Join us in standing for excellence in journalism and serving our community. Download the African Diaspora News app today.
So a while back, I reported on the name change of Dundas Square, which is located in downtown Toronto, being changed to a Ghanaian name, Sankofa Square. I'm going to remind you of the report, and then we'll talk about it further. So we have Yonge and Dundas Square. This is in the heart of Toronto, and it is basically Toronto's answer to New York's Times Square. This is where visitors and residents of Toronto gather to enjoy multicultural festivals and concerts, as well as you've got street performers. It's like pretty much where the action is. And anybody wants to go there. It's fun. They have free concerts on Fridays during the summer months, and it's just a good time. And as I said, it's right in the heart of the city. Well, they're undergoing a name change. And the new name is going to be Sankofa Square. This derives from Ghana, and it represents the reflection on teachings of the past in order to move forward together. So the reason why they're changing this name is because the name Dundas is named after a Scottish politician by the name of Henry Dundas, and he's also known as the Great Tyrant. Henry Dundas was responsible for delaying the abolishment of slavery in the British Empire for 15 years. And as a result of that caused over 630,000 slaves to have to wait a decade for freedom. So with everything that's been going on in the world, and for the sake of diversity and equity and all of those other good stuff, they have elected to change the name, and they felt like Sankofa was very befitting of the messaging that they want to portray. This has caused public outcry. What I knew would happen is that the folks would have such an issue with it, and they would be crying out from the wilderness that this name is not right, it's going to cost too much money, and they don't agree with this Ghanaian name. We expected it. It has happened. We have a debutante by the name of Daniel Tate, who went and tallied up a bunch of signatures on a petition. I believe it's up to 30,000 signatures. And then he, presented it to the executive committee, and a squabble happened between him and Councillor Chris Consey, who happens to be a brother. Take a look.
When it came to council, as you mentioned, it was actually the same time that we renamed Rob Ford Stadium. Where's your petition for that?
Well, Rob Ford was a legend of Toronto, and he's a legend of Etobicoke. So it's actually very fitting and relevant to name.
Thank you.
Where was the Toronto candidates for Yonge and Dundas? Gordon Lightfoot Square, Jackie Shane Square. Herb Carnegie was a hockey player who broke the color barrier. He was from Toronto. Imagine that, Herb Carnegie Square. So using the Rob Ford card is kind of lowballing Councillor Moyse.
Okay, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'd just like you to...
Can you repeat that? Say it on the microphone.
Hang on a second.
I'm being insulted by Councillor
Allow
Moyse.
Councillor
I don't
Fletcher
appreciate
to
you
ask the
calling me a
question.
racist, because I'm definitely...
Wait, Councillor Councillor
So I spent a lot of time and energy trying to put together what I thought was a really compelling, well-researched, reasonable presentation on why this renaming exercise is something the city doesn't want and the city doesn't need right now, especially in these financial times. You know, we're in a huge budget crunch with the city. We have infrastructure issues, you name it. And so I made what I thought was a really great presentation. And then there was a Q&A after, and then the councillors, or at least 3 of them, basically attacked me. And I was hoping that they would engage me intellectually on the things that I was bringing forth, but it turned into mudslinging. And, you know, the video speaks for itself, and I was pretty surprised by that.
The name really has no connection to Canada.
So you would think when there's an issue that has widespread unpopularity, that polls in the like single digits, and you're in a major financial crunch, as the city of Toronto is in, plus you have people power in this petition, you would think cooler heads would prevail, and at least we'd press pause and reevaluate what we're doing. But they doubled down. And that was really shocking to me. Like, this is nothing to sneeze at, 30,000 people. And I'm getting messages from people across the political spectrum who are saying, you're on the right path, you're doing it correctly. And they really embarrassed themselves. And all I know is there's going to be another election in October 2026, and we should remember this moment.
So Chris Consey mentioned the changing of the name to Rob Ford Stadium, who is a former Premier of Toronto. He has since passed away. He is also the brother of Doug Ford, who is also a Premier of Toronto. So the name of the stadium initially was called Centennial Park Football Stadium, and they named it to Rob Ford Stadium. Chris Consey is saying, where was the outrage when that name was changed? And as you heard from Daniel Tate, he says, well, Rob Ford is a Toronto legend, so there's no issue with that name change, but the name Sankofa to them has no connection to Toronto. I will also add that the 30,000 signatures that Daniel Tate tallied up, many of them are not Toronto residents, so they don't even count. Daniel Tate also mentions why we don't change the name to Gordon Lightfoot. Gordon Lightfoot is one of the folks. He is a Canadian singer-songwriter and guitarist, and he's most known for helping shape the sound of folk and pop. So, and he did this in the 60s. So he mentions him. He also mentions Jackie Shane. Jackie Shane was a Canadian R&B singer, and she was one of the first Black trans singers. So he's saying, well, what about her? Daniel Tate also mentions Herb Carnegie. Herb Carnegie was a Black hockey player in the 1940s. He was known as one of the best Black hockey players to ever play the sport, and he suffered a lot of racism. So he mentioned him as well. And that's great if you want to throw in some Black people, but at the end of the day, if they named it after one of the folks, there would be no issue. It costed money to change the name from Centennial Park Stadium to Rob Ford Stadium, but there was no outrage over that. Now that we want to name something that has a great meaning, as you heard in the clip I showed you from when I reported back a little while ago, it's a very befitting name, especially with all of the racial unrest and the history of Henry Dundas and the history of slavery in Canada. It is the perfect name, and it has the best message. And his claim that it's going to cost a lot of money, which is one of the things he pitched as one of the reasons why he has a problem with the name, the funds that are being used are not taken from taxpayers' money. They're taken from a fund that is contributed by a bunch of developers in and around the Yonge and Dundas area. So it's not taxpayers' money. You also heard Councillor Consey call Daniel Tate a racist, and he's calling him a racist because he's making a federal case out of this because it's a Black name, and that's the bottom line. And just because he peppered us with a couple of Black people, I guarantee you, if we had changed the name to Jackie Shane or Herb Carnegie, that he would have had an issue with that, as would a lot of the folks in Toronto and Ontario and Canada. And there is an arena named after Herb Carnegie. It's called Herb Carnegie Arena, and it's a hockey arena, and it's out in an area called North York in Ontario. So there is something named after Herb Carnegie. At the end of the day, that's not really what it's about. It's about the fact that Yonge and Dundas is going to be named after a Black heritage, and that is a problem for the folks. Despite the fact that there is such a heavy history around Henry Dundas, and what Toronto is starting to do is make changes to any names that are named after anybody that's associated with racism or slavery. And so they're slowly making their rounds and making these changes, and the folks are not happy about it. What we would like, in addition to changing these names, is reparations. Can you please cut us a check? Because slavery existed here in Canada for hundreds and hundreds of years. We are entitled to a check. So could you add a check to all of these name changes? Please don't pacify us with just a name change. That's just not good enough. So after this squabble, there was a vote and we won. So at the end of the day, Yonge and Dundas Square is going to be renamed Sankofa Square, and they've already started changing the names. And that is that. So the folks are just going to have to get used to it. But as I said, we also want a check. So when are you going to cut that check for us, Canada? Canada? Canada! Reparations check. Let me know what you all think about this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also share this content. Also download the African Diaspora News app. You can grab it at the Google or Apple store, or head over to africandiasporanews.org and download it there. You'll have access to content you won't see here or anywhere else, so you want to grab that app. Also subscribe to my YouTube channel, EA Public Relations. Until next time, please be safe, everyone.